What if I told you that the happiest day of my life became the day my own parents publicly betrayed me? Imagine standing at the altar, radiant in white, surrounded by everyone you love, only to have your world shatter with a few casual words. My name is Eleanor Vance, and on my wedding day, a day that should have been pure joy, my parents looked me dead in the eye, smiled and said, "We're taking your gift money. Your sister needs it more." That wasn't a joke. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a cold, calculated declaration delivered in front of my new husband, his family, and every single guest. The air left my lungs. My perfect white dress suddenly felt like a shroud. The smiles on their faces, the polite nods from guests who clearly overheard, they all blurred into a grotesque painting. For years, I had tried to earn their approval, to be enough, to be seen. That moment, though, was the final brutal realization I would never be enough for them. My entire life, every achievement, every sacrifice, had been meticulously weighed against my older sister Sarah, and I always came up short. The resentment had been a slow burn, a tiny ember in my heart since childhood. Sarah was the golden child, the fragile one, the one who always needed more attention, more money, more excuses. When I got into a top-tier college, they barely blinked. When Sarah dropped out of community college for the third time, it was a family crisis demanding all resources. When I landed my dream job in New York City, they asked if I could send money home to help Sarah with her business venture, which was code for her latest failed scheme. But this was a public execution of my worth, wrapped in a thin veil of familial duty. This wasn't just about money, it was about the complete erasure of my identity, my sacrifices, my very existence, all for Sarah. That night, after the last guest had left and the silence of our new home pressed in, the betrayal hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just my parents. It was years of a dynamic I had desperately tried to ignore. Years of being the invisible daughter, the reliable one, the one who always understood. My husband, bless his heart, tried to comfort me, but what could he say? How do you explain to someone that your own flesh and blood would steal from your wedding, not out of necessity, but out of a twisted sense of entitlement and favoritism? The tears came then, hot and angry, not for the money, but for the shattered illusion of a loving family. That night, something inside me snapped. The little girl who craved her parents' love died, and in her place, a new resolve was born. I became obsessed with understanding how they could do this, obsessed with the injustice, and yes, obsessed with finding a way to make them understand the pain they inflicted. The initial shock gave way to a cold, calculating anger. I started digging, looking for answers, for anything that could explain such a profound disregard. My parents, pillars of the community, churchgoers, always presenting a picture of wholesome American family values. But beneath that veneer, I began to uncover secrets, financial maneuvers, and decades-old resentments that painted a far darker picture. The more I unearthed, the more I realized this wasn't just a wedding day incident. It was the culmination of a lifetime of manipulation and quiet cruelty. What I discovered next was a revelation so shocking. It made the wedding day theft seem like a child's prank. It wasn't just about Sarah's supposed needs. It was about a hidden debt, a past mistake, and a desperate cover-up that involved far more than just my wedding fund. The truth, when it finally revealed itself, exposed a web of deceit that stretched back to my childhood, intertwining my future with their past in a way I never could have imagined. Every memory, every slight, every moment of perceived favoritism suddenly clicked into place, forming a horrifying mosaic of betrayal. My perfect American family was a carefully constructed facade, and I had been a pawn in their elaborate game. The confrontation was inevitable. I had to face them, not just for myself, but for the ghost of the little girl who still yearned for their love. But how do you confront people who believe they've done nothing wrong, people who are convinced their actions are always justified? The stage was set, not in a courtroom, but in the very living room where I had grown up, where countless family dinners had been held. I walked in, armed not with shouts or accusations, but with undeniable proof. The air crackled with tension. My parents, so composed and self-assured, watched me, their faces slowly draining of color as I laid out every single detail, every piece of evidence. The moment of reckoning had arrived. Their carefully constructed world was about to crumble. What happened next would change everything, not just for me, but for the entire Vance family, forever. The air in the ballroom felt thick and oppressive, despite the extravagant floral arrangements and the soft glow of 1,000 fairy lights. My name is Alara, and this was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, the culmination of years spent dreaming of a perfect wedding. Every detail, from the delicate lace on my gown to the string quartet playing our song, had been meticulously planned. I looked at David, my new husband, his eyes shining with a love that felt like a lifeline in a world that often felt chaotic. He was my anchor, my calm. Yet even his presence couldn't entirely quell the gnawing anxiety that had taken root deep within me, a familiar dread whenever my parents were near. They stood across the room, my mother in a shimmering sapphire dress, my father in a perfectly tailored suit, both radiating an almost theatrical benevolence. Their smiles, usually reserved for public appearances and family photos, were plastered on their faces like masks. I watched them, a knot tightening in my stomach, as they worked the room, schmoozing with David's family, who were clearly impressed by their polished demeanor. David's parents, kind and unassuming, had welcomed me into their lives with open arms, something my own parents had never quite managed. I often wondered if they truly saw me, Alara, or merely an extension of their carefully curated image. The toasts had been lovely, filled with warmth and genuine affection from our friends and David's family. Then came my parents' turn. My father, with a booming voice that always seemed to fill any room, raised his champagne flute. "To Alara and David," he declared, his smile unwavering. "May your life together be filled with joy, prosperity, and endless love. You both deserve all the happiness in the world." My mother, ever the elegant compliment, nodded gracefully beside him. A wave of relief washed over me. Perhaps, just this once, they would set aside their usual agenda, their subtle digs, their constant comparisons to my younger sister Chloe. Chloe. Her name alone brought a familiar pang. Chloe, the golden child, the one who effortlessly excelled at everything, the one who always needed more, deserved more, according to my parents. My entire life had been a subtle, unspoken competition with her, a race I never knew I was running, and one I always seemed to lose. Even on my wedding day, a part of me braced for the inevitable mention, the subtle shift of attention. The reception moved into full swing. The band struck up a lively tune, and guests began to dance. David pulled me onto the floor, and for a few blissful minutes, the world outside our embrace faded away. His laughter was infectious, his touch reassuring. I felt, for the first time that day, truly happy, truly free. Then, a tap on my shoulder. It was my mother, her smile still fixed, but her eyes held a glint I knew too well, the look that preceded a talk. My father stood beside her, his hand resting on her back, a silent show of solidarity. "Alara," my mother began, her voice sweet, almost cloying. "Could we have a word? Just for a moment." My heart sank. I glanced at David, who, sensing the shift in my demeanor, squeezed my hand reassuringly. "I'll just grab us some water," he said, excusing himself. We moved to a quieter corner, near a large window overlooking the city lights. The vibrant energy of the party felt miles away. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but a tremor betrayed my apprehension. My father cleared his throat. "Alara, darling," he started, his tone softening, a tactic I recognized as a prelude to something difficult. "Your mother and I have been talking about the gift money." My stomach churned. The gift money was the collective sum from our guests, a substantial amount that David and I had planned to use as a down payment on a small house, a future we had meticulously planned. "Yes?" I prompted, my voice barely a whisper. My mother stepped forward, her hand reaching for mine, but I instinctively pulled away. "Well, you see, sweetie," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Chloe, she's going through a really tough time right now. Her business, it's just not taking off the way she hoped. She's really struggling." A cold wave washed over me. The resentment, dormant for so long, began to stir. "What does that have to do with our wedding gifts?" I asked, my voice rising slightly despite my best efforts. my father interjected, his voice firming. Alara, don't be dramatic. It's simple. Your sister needs it more. She needs a fresh start, a leg up. You and David, you're stable. You have good jobs. You'll be fine. I stared at them, speechless, the words hanging in the air like poison. My parents, on my wedding day, were telling me they were taking the money meant for my new life, my future with David, and giving it to Chloe. The betrayal was a physical blow, sharper than any I had ever experienced. Their smiles, once so benign, now seemed to mock me. We're taking your gift money, my mother reiterated, her voice devoid of any real empathy. Your sister needs it more. The music from the ballroom seemed to fade, replaced by a roaring in my ears. The joy, the love, the promise of a new beginning, all of it shattered in that single cruel moment. My vision blurred, tears stinging my eyes. I looked at their faces, expecting to see some flicker of remorse, some sign that they understood the magnitude of what they were doing. There was nothing. Just that placid, unyielding resolve. This wasn't just about money. It was about a lifetime of being second best, of being overlooked, of my needs always coming after Chloe's. This was the ultimate confirmation of where I stood in their eyes. This was the moment Alara realized she had been profoundly, irrevocably wronged. This was the moment the seeds of something dark, something consuming, were planted. The words, delivered with such placid, unyielding resolve, echoed in my ears long after my parents had retreated into the throng of well-wishers. This wasn't just about money. It was about a lifetime of being second best, of being overlooked, of my needs always coming after Chloe's. This was the ultimate confirmation of where I stood in their eyes. This was the moment the seeds of something dark, something consuming, were planted. I felt David's hand on my arm, his touch a gentle inquiry. He looked at me, his brow furrowed with concern, his eyes mirroring the confusion I knew must be etched on my face. How could I explain this to him? How could I articulate the specific, insidious brand of casual cruelty my parents had perfected over decades? Later that night, in the quiet sanctuary of our hotel suite, the veneer finally cracked. The elegant wedding dress felt like a cage, the delicate lace chafing my skin. I tore it off, the silk rustling a furious symphony, and flung it onto the plush carpet. David watched me, silent, his presence a steady anchor in the storm brewing inside me. They took it, David, I whispered, the words catching in my throat, hot and raw. All of it, every single cent of our wedding gifts. For Chloe. The name tasted like ash. He knelt beside me, pulling me into his embrace, his arms strong and comforting. What are you talking about, Alara? Why would they do that? His voice was gentle, laced with disbelief. I recounted the conversation, the cold, clinical way my mother had explained their decision, the dismissive wave of my father's hand. I told him about Chloe, my younger sister, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose every whim was indulged while I was expected to be self-sufficient, resilient, invisible. I spoke of the years of subtle slights, the forgotten birthdays, the achievements minimized, all in the shadow of Chloe's perceived brilliance. My voice grew louder, fueled by a lifetime of suppressed anger. She's always needed more, David. Always. More attention, more money, more excuses. And I've always been the one to pay for it, one way or another. David listened, his expression shifting from confusion to a quiet, simmering anger. He was a man of integrity, raised in a home where fairness and respect were paramount. The concept of parents so callously disregarding one child for another was alien to him. This isn't right, Alara, he said, his voice low, his jaw tight. This is theft. And it's a profound betrayal. His validation, though, small, was a balm to my wounded spirit. For so long I had questioned my own perceptions, convinced myself I was overreacting, that I was simply ungrateful. But David saw it, truly saw it, for the ugly thing it was. The next morning, a chilling calm settled over me. The initial shock had given way to something colder, harder. I looked at David, still asleep beside me, his face peaceful. He deserved better than to be dragged into this mess, yet he was already in it. inextricably linked to my pain. A plan began to form, vague at first, then solidifying with each passing hour. This wasn't just about reclaiming the money, it was about reclaiming my dignity, about finally making my parents see the consequences of their actions, not just for me, but for David too. They had disrespected us both, and that could not stand. I spent the next few days in a haze of phone calls and research. I spoke to a lawyer, a family friend of David's, who listened patiently, his voice grave. He confirmed what I already suspected. Legally, it was a murky area. The money was a gift given to us. But the act of taking it back, especially under false pretenses, bordered on fraud. More importantly, it was a moral outrage. The lawyer advised caution, suggesting mediation, but I knew that was futile. My parents operated on a different plane, one where their word was law and their children were pawns. The anger, once a raging fire, now burned with a steady, controlled intensity. I started watching my parents more closely, observing their routines, their habits, their vulnerabilities. I remembered conversations, casual remarks, seemingly insignificant details that now clicked into place like pieces of a dark puzzle. Their obsession with appearances, their carefully constructed facade of success, their reliance on social standing, these were their weak points. Chloe's constant need for money, her reckless spending, her perpetual emergencies, these were the levers I could pull. David, ever supportive, watched my transformation with a mixture of concern and admiration. He didn't try to dissuade me, understanding that this was a battle I had to fight, not just for the money, but for my own sense of self-worth. He became my silent partner, my confidant, his quiet strength a constant reassurance. We talked late into the nights, dissecting every angle, every potential outcome. He helped me refine my strategy, his logical mind complementing my emotional drive. This was no longer just my fight, it was ours, and we were going to win. The ballroom, once a symbol of celebration, transformed into a battleground in my mind. Every polite smile, every empty toast from my parents, felt like a calculated maneuver. David's unwavering support became my anchor, his quiet strength a constant reminder that I wasn't fighting this alone. We spent countless hours dissecting the problem, turning it over and over like a complex puzzle. My initial rage, a hot blinding fury, slowly cooled into a sharp strategic resolve. David, ever the pragmatist, helped me channel that raw emotion into something productive. He saw the fire in my eyes, not the hysteria, and that made all the difference. My parents' audacity, their casual disregard for my happiness, fueled a new kind of determination. They had always treated me like a secondary character in their grand narrative, a prop to be moved and manipulated. Now, I saw their true colors in stark relief. The money, the $20,000 that was meant to be our nest egg, our fresh start, suddenly became more than just currency. It symbolized years of neglect, of being overlooked, of having my worth measured against Alara's perceived needs. David understood this. He didn't dismiss my anger. He validated it, helping me articulate the deeper hurt beneath the surface. Our strategy began to take shape, born from late-night conversations fueled by lukewarm coffee and a shared sense of injustice. We started with the obvious, the legal route. A quick consultation with a family friend who was a lawyer confirmed what we already suspected. It would be a long, drawn-out and emotionally draining battle with no guarantee of success. My parents, masters of manipulation, had likely crafted their gift in a way that made it legally ambiguous. A verbal promise easily denied. The thought of airing our dirty laundry in court, of dragging our families through a public spectacle, felt like another victory for them, another way to exert control. That wasn't the kind of win I wanted. No, this needed to be different. This had to be a win on my terms, a quiet, precise strike that would hit them where it hurt most, their carefully constructed image. Their reputation, their standing in the community, was their most prized possession. They thrived on the admiration of others, on the illusion of being perfect parents, generous and benevolent. That's where we would strike. David, with his quiet brilliance, suggested we start gathering evidence. Not legal evidence, but social evidence. We began compiling a timeline of their subtle slights, their preferential treatment of Alara, the countless times they had subtly undermined me. It wasn't just about the wedding money, it was about a lifetime of emotional manipulation. We dug through old emails, found forgotten text messages, even unearthed dusty photo albums where Alara was always front and center, while I was relegated to the background, a blurry afterthought. Each piece of information, no matter how small, felt like a vital clue, painting a clearer picture of their calculated cruelty. The process was painful, forcing me to relive years of buried resentment. There were nights I cried, overwhelmed by the sheer weight of it all. But David was always there, a steady presence, holding my hand, reminding me why we were doing this. He helped me see that this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my narrative, about finally standing up for myself. It was about proving, not just to them, but to myself, that I was worthy, that I mattered. Our focus shifted to the upcoming charity gala, an annual event my parents chaired, a cornerstone of their public persona. It was their biggest night of the year, a meticulously choreographed display of their philanthropy and influence. Everyone who mattered in their social circle would be there. This was our stage. This was where we would dismantle their facade, piece by carefully chosen piece. We brainstormed scenarios, running through every possible interaction, every potential reaction. David, with his uncanny ability to anticipate human behavior, helped me refine my approach. We couldn't be aggressive. That would only make us look petty. We needed to be calm, collected, and devastatingly effective. The goal wasn't to scream or accuse, it was to subtly expose, to plant seeds of doubt that would fester and grow. My heart pounded with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. This was it. This was the moment we had been building towards. The resentment that had simmered for so long was now a finely honed weapon. The betrayal, once a crushing blow, had become a catalyst. I was no longer the overlooked daughter, I was a woman on a mission. And David, my husband, my partner in this quiet war, was right there beside me, his hand a comforting weight in mine. The gala was just weeks away, and we were ready to play our hand. The days leading up to the gala felt like a countdown to detonation. Every waking moment was consumed by the plan, a meticulous orchestration of events designed to expose my parents for who they truly were. David and I worked tirelessly, our apartment transforming into a war room. Documents were sorted, timelines meticulously crafted, and every potential loophole in their carefully constructed facade was scrutinized. The initial shock of their betrayal had solidified into a cold, calculated resolve. This wasn't about anger anymore, it was about justice, about reclaiming a narrative they had stolen from me. I remembered a conversation with David from weeks earlier, shortly after the wedding. We were sitting on our small balcony, the city lights twinkling below like scattered diamonds. He had held my hand, his thumb tracing slow circles on my skin. "Alara," he'd said, his voice soft but firm, "you don't have to do this. You can walk away. We can build our own life, far from their shadow." His words were a lifeline, a testament to his unwavering love and support. But walking away wasn't an option. Not anymore. The thought of letting them continue their charade, of allowing them to manipulate others as they had manipulated me for years, was unbearable. It felt like a moral imperative, a duty to myself and to anyone else they might have wronged. Our strategy hinged on leveraging their own vanity and their obsession with appearances. The gala, a prestigious charity event they co-chaired annually, was their stage. It was where they shone brightest, surrounded by influential figures and flashing cameras. They prided themselves on their philanthropy, their public image as pillars of the community. We intended to dismantle that image, piece by excruciating piece. We had secured irrefutable evidence of their financial misconduct, not just with my wedding gift money, but with other donations that had mysteriously vanished into their personal accounts. The paper trail was damning, a testament to their greed and hypocrisy. One evening, as David was cross-referencing bank statements, he paused, a frown creasing his brow. "Alara," he began, his voice tinged with concern, "are you sure you're ready for this? Once this genie is out of the bottle, there's no putting it back." I looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw the depth of his worry. He wasn't questioning my resolve, but rather the emotional toll it would take. "I'm ready, David," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "I've been ready my whole life. This isn't just about the money. It's about finally being seen, about finally being free. The day of the gala arrived with an almost palpable tension. I chose a simple, elegant black dress, a stark contrast to the flamboyant gowns my mother favored. David, ever my rock, looked distinguished in his tuxedo. As we drove to the venue, a grand old ballroom in the heart of the city, my heart hammered against my ribs. It felt like walking into a lion's den, but this time, I had a weapon. We had arranged for a discreet, trusted journalist, Sarah Jenkins, to be present. She was known for her integrity and her fearless pursuit of the truth, exactly the kind of person we needed to expose my parents' duplicity. Upon entering the ballroom, the familiar opulence washed over me. Crystal chandeliers glittered, champagne flutes clinked, and the air hummed with polite chatter. My parents, naturally, were at the center of it all, holding court near the main stage. My mother, in a shimmering emerald gown, looked every inch the benevolent matriarch, her smile wide and practiced. My father, with his booming laugh, clapped backs and shook hands, exuding an aura of unimpeachable respectability. A wave of nausea washed over me, but I pushed it down. This was it. David squeezed my hand, a silent reassurance. We moved through the crowd, making small talk, observing. Sarah was already there, blending seamlessly into the background, her camera bag slung casually over her shoulder. The plan was set for after the main speeches, just before the charity auction began. That was when the room would be at its most attentive, its most captive. As my father took the stage to deliver his annual address, his voice reverberating through the opulent hall, a strange calm settled over me. He spoke of integrity, of giving back, of the importance of community. The irony was suffocating. I watched his performance, a master manipulator at work, and felt a surge of cold fury. This was the man who had taught me the value of $1, only to steal my own. This was the woman who had preached honesty, yet lived a life of deceit. When he finished, the applause was thunderous. My mother joined him on stage, accepting a bouquet of roses, her eyes scanning the room, undoubtedly searching for any sign of dissent. That's when David caught my eye. It was time. He gave a subtle nod, and I moved. My heart was pounding, but my steps were steady, purposeful. I walked towards the stage, every eye in the room now on me. The murmurs began, a ripple of curiosity turning into confused whispers. My parents, still basking in the glow of their applause, finally noticed me. Their smiles faltered, replaced by expressions of bewildered irritation. They had no idea what was coming. I took a deep breath, the microphone feeling heavy in my hand, yet strangely empowering. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice clear and steady, surprising even myself. "Today is a celebration of love and of truth. My husband David and I are overwhelmed by your support." I paused, letting my gaze sweep over the room, landing briefly on my parents, whose faces were now a mask of confusion and growing alarm. The murmurs quieted, replaced by an expectant silence. "Many of you know my parents, a pillar of our community," I continued, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in my voice that only I could feel. "They've always prided themselves on their generosity, their impeccable image." I saw my mother's eyes narrow, a flicker of suspicion crossing her face. My father, ever the strategist, was already scanning the room, trying to gauge the mood. David squeezed my hand, a silent reassurance. His presence was my anchor, his love the fuel for this fire. "But sometimes," I said, my voice gaining strength, "image can be a carefully constructed facade, and generosity can come with a hidden price." A few gasps rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the usual wedding speech. My parents shifted uncomfortably, their smiles completely gone. My father opened his mouth as if to interject, but I held up a hand, a gesture of quiet authority that stunned him into silence. "You see," I explained, my eyes now fixed on my parents. "For years, my sister Alara has struggled with addiction. A heartbreaking struggle, one that has caused our family immense pain." A collective sigh went through the room. Some knew of Alara's issues, others were just learning. My mother's face drained of color. This was not the narrative they had crafted. "My parents," I went on, my voice laced with a raw, undeniable pain, "have always claimed to support Alara. They've told everyone they poured their resources into her recovery. They even told David and me just hours ago that the generous wedding gifts you all contributed would be taken to fund Alara's urgent treatment. A truly noble cause, wouldn't you agree? The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken accusation. A murmur of agreement, then confusion spread among the guests. Except, I stated, my voice now steel, it's a lie. The word echoed in the sudden, profound silence. My mother let out a small, choked sound. My father's jaw tightened, his eyes flashing with a dangerous anger. David's grip on my hand was firm, a silent promise of unwavering support. Alara is not in treatment, I revealed. The truth, a bitter taste on my tongue. She's not receiving any help from them. In fact, she's been living in a tiny apartment, barely making ends meet, while they've been using her struggles as a convenient excuse for their own financial gain. I saw faces in the crowd contort with understanding, with disgust. Many of them had donated generously, believing their money was going to a good cause. For years, I continued, my voice breaking slightly, they've used Alara's pain to manipulate and control, to extract sympathy and money from those who genuinely cared. They've systematically isolated her, telling her she was a burden, that no one else would help her, while simultaneously telling everyone else they were her only saviors. The raw emotion in my voice was undeniable, cutting through the polished veneer of the wedding reception. The money you so generously gave us today, I announced, my voice rising, the money they intended to seize is not going to Alara's supposed treatment. It's going directly to Alara herself. Every single penny. It will be used to get her the real help she needs, the help my parents have denied her for years. I gestured to a large, clear donation box that had been placed discreetly near the stage, now visible to everyone. Written on it in bold letters was, for Alara's new beginning. A wave of applause, tentative at first, then growing into a resounding roar, swept through the room. It wasn't the polite applause of a wedding. It was the thunderous ovation of vindication, of justice. My parents stood frozen, their carefully constructed world crumbling around them. My mother's eyes darted wildly, searching for an escape, for a way to salvage their shattered image. My father, usually so composed, looked utterly defeated, his face a mask of shock and fury. And as for David and me, I said, my voice filled with a quiet triumph, we've already ensured our future. We don't need their help, nor their generosity. We have each other, and we have the truth. I looked at David, his eyes shining with pride, a silent acknowledgement of our shared victory. The weight of years of resentment, a feeling unseen and unheard, began to lift. The air in the ballroom no longer felt oppressive. It felt clear, breathable, filled with the promise of a genuine, honest future. The truth, finally, was free. The silence that followed my declaration was deafening, a vacuum where the polite murmurs of a wedding reception should have been. Every eye in the ballroom, it seemed, was fixed on my parents, then on me. My mother's perfectly manicured hand flew to her chest, her face a mask of wounded innocence, while my father's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing to angry slits. Their carefully constructed facade, the one they'd worn for decades, was crumbling before everyone, piece by agonizing piece. This was it, the moment I had envisioned, rehearsed, and dreaded for so long. This was the truth, finally free. My mother, recovering her composure with a theatrical gasp, attempted to regain control. Alara, darling, what on earth are you saying? You're clearly overwrought. This is your wedding day, not a stage for melodrama. Her voice, usually so composed, wavered slightly at the edges. My father, ever the strategist, stepped forward, his booming voice returning, though now laced with a dangerous edge. Alara, you are embarrassing us. You are embarrassing yourself. This is a private family matter, not something to air in front of all these people. I met his gaze, unflinching. The fear that had once paralyzed me in their presence was gone, replaced by a cold, steady resolve. A private family matter? I echoed, my voice clear and strong, resonating through the hushed room. Is it private when you openly solicit gifts for Alara's struggles, claiming she needs them more than a newly married couple building a life? Is it private when you've taken every dime, every opportunity, every ounce of support meant for me and funneled it into her bottomless pit of manufactured crises? A ripple went through the crowd. David's family, who had always treated me with genuine warmth, exchanged shocked glances. My friends, who had witnessed countless subtle slights over the years, nodded in grim understanding. The truth, once spoken, had a life of its own. My mother's face flushed a deep crimson. How dare you accuse us of such a thing? We have always been generous, loving parents. We have sacrificed everything for you and your sister. Her voice rose, bordering on a shriek. Alara has always been fragile. She needed more. You were always so independent, so strong. We thought you wouldn't mind a little reallocation. Reallocation? I scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. You call taking my college fund, my first car money, the down payment for my first apartment, and now my wedding gifts reallocation? You call telling me I was too much or too ambitious while coddling Alara's every whim loving? You didn't reallocate, you pilfered. You didn't sacrifice, you manipulated. My father, his face contorted with rage, took another step towards me, his hand raising slightly as if to silence me. David, ever vigilant, moved subtly, placing a protective hand on my back, a silent warning to my father. The gesture was small, but the message was clear. I was not alone. And the struggles, Mother? I pressed, my voice unwavering. Let's talk about Alara's struggles. The sudden illness that required a trip to a luxury spa in Arizona paid for by my college savings. The career crisis that needed a lavish apartment in New York, funded by my apartment down payment. The emotional distress that conveniently coincided with my promotions, always requiring a significant financial outlay from you, which you, in turn, extracted from me. Convenient, isn't it? How her needs always seemed to align with what you could take from me. The color drained from my mother's face. She looked at my father, a flicker of panic in her eyes. The carefully constructed narrative of Alara's perpetual victimhood was collapsing. And the gift you mentioned, Father? I continued, my gaze sweeping across the room, ensuring everyone heard. The gift that was supposed to be a surprise, a grand gesture of your love? The one you announced to everyone here, just moments before trying to collect the money? That gift was never for David and me, was it? It was always for Alara. Another one of her manufactured emergencies. Another way to funnel resources away from me, under the guise of parental generosity. My father's face was now a mask of pure fury. You ungrateful child, he roared, his voice echoing through the ballroom. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? On your wedding day? Repay you? I repeated, the irony almost too much to bear. You want repayment for a lifetime of emotional manipulation, financial exploitation, and blatant favoritism? You want repayment for constantly undermining my achievements while enabling Alara's endless parade of self-inflicted disasters? My repayment is this, Father, the truth, exposed, for everyone to see. I turned to the guests, my voice softer no, but no less resolute. David and I do not need their gift. We do not need their generosity. We have each other and we have the truth. I looked at David, his eyes shining with pride, a silent acknowledgement of our shared victory. The weight of years of resentment, of feeling unseen and unheard, began to lift. The air in the ballroom no longer felt oppressive. It felt clear, breathable, filled with the promise of a genuine, honest future. The truth, finally, was free. My parents, defeated and exposed, stood frozen, their masks shattered, their carefully constructed world in ruins. The whispers that had once been hushed became louder, a murmur of understanding and quiet condemnation. I took David's hand, a profound sense of peace settling over me. This wasn't just my wedding day, it was my liberation day. We turned, walking away from the wreckage of their lies, towards a future built on honesty, respect, and genuine love. The path ahead was clear, finally free from the shadows of their control. The story of their deceit was over, and mine, a story of strength and resilience, had just truly begun. The silence in the room was deafening, punctuated only by the frantic scribbling of the court reporter. My parents, once so confident, now looked like withered husks, their faces pale and their eyes darting nervously. Sarah, my sister, sat beside them, her usual haughty demeanor replaced by a fragile vulnerability. The judge's voice cut through the tension, clear and unwavering. He read the verdict, each word a hammer blow against the fortress of lies my family had built. The court found them guilty of financial fraud, of misappropriation of funds, of a callous disregard for the law and for the well-being of their own son. The evidence I had painstakingly gathered, the meticulous records, the damning testimonies, it all painted an undeniable picture. Their carefully constructed facade had crumbled, revealing the greed and deceit that lay beneath. As the judge pronounced their sentences, a strange mix of emotions washed over me. There was no triumphant roar, no surge of vindication. Instead, a hollow ache settled in my chest. This wasn't the sweet revenge I had envisioned during those long, sleepless nights. This was a heavy, somber end to a chapter I wished had never been written. My parents received significant prison sentences, their lavish lives reduced to concrete walls and steel bars. Sarah, implicated but less directly involved, received a suspended sentence and a hefty fine, her future irrevocably altered. The wedding money, the supposed gift they had stolen, was ordered to be returned, along with substantial damages. It was a victory, legally speaking, a complete and utter win. Yet, the cost felt immeasurable. I watched as they were led away, their eyes meeting mine for a fleeting moment. There was no apology, no remorse, only a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher, perhaps a grudging acknowledgement of my tenacity, or maybe just the bitter taste of defeat. That night, I didn't celebrate. I didn't pop champagne or gloat. I sat in my quiet apartment, the weight of everything pressing down on me. The months that followed were a blur of legal proceedings, financial reconstruction, and a profound sense of emptiness. The money was returned, every last cent, and then some. I used a portion of it to pay off my remaining debts, to secure my financial independence. The rest, I donated to a local charity that supports young adults struggling with family estrangement. It felt like the only way to truly cleanse myself of the bitterness, to transform something ugly into something meaningful. My wedding, the very catalyst for this nightmare, had been postponed indefinitely. Emily, my fiancée, had stood by me through every agonizing step, her unwavering support a beacon in the darkness. She never pushed me for answers I wasn't ready to give, never judged the raw, visceral need for justice that consumed me. She simply loved me, patiently and unconditionally. One crisp autumn afternoon, months after the verdict, Emily and I stood on a quiet beach, the waves crashing softly against the shore. The air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of salt and freedom. I held her hand, her fingers interlaced with mine, a comforting warmth spreading through me. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice soft, her eyes reflecting the endless horizon. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw a future unburdened by the past. The resentment, the betrayal, the consuming obsession, it had all led me here, to this moment of bittersweet closure. I had sought justice, and I had found it. But in the process, I had also found something far more profound, my own resilience, my own strength, and the unwavering love of the woman beside me. "Yes," I replied, the word a whisper carried on the wind. "I'm ready. We decided to elope, just the two of us, a simple ceremony overlooking the ocean. There were no grand receptions, no elaborate gifts, no family drama. It was perfect. It was everything I had truly wanted, stripped bare of all the external pressures and expectations." My parents were not there, nor was Sarah. Their absence was not a void, but a quiet, peaceful space, allowing us to build our own foundation, free from the shadows of the past. The journey had been long and arduous, a path paved with pain and anger. It had reshaped me, hardened me in some ways, but also taught me the true value of integrity, of choosing what is right, even when it's incredibly difficult. The scars remained, a reminder of the battles fought, but they no longer defined me. I was no longer just the wronged son. I was David, a man who had faced his demons, emerged from the fire, and finally, truly found his peace.